Alright, how's it going everyone? Mike the Warhost here, and today it's time to start talking about Mythos again. I had originally planned on doing this video a bit sooner, but there were some complications that took up a lot of time. But I'm here now, so let's go ahead and get started. The Priory is one of two initial factions that launched with the game a few months ago alongside the Hidden Ones. Ostensibly the good guys of the Mythos factions, the Priory is an ancient institution that can draw its lineage back to antiquity and potentially beyond. They are the ancient guardians of all knowledge regarding the strange, otherworldly force known as Mythos existing in the world today. Because of this, they are one of the primary forces fighting for humanity's survival in the Shadow War against the Old Ones. The term Priory is used as an umbrella term to bring in a large number of self-contained and largely independent cells, which allows for the easy expansion of the Priory faction in the future. The current Priory cell available is led by Professor Zachary Lazarus, a dedicated and formidable man with a few odd quirks here and there, but is otherwise wholly reliable. If you want to learn more about the Priory's lore, there's an excellent short story in the Mythos rulebook PDF titled A Different Kind of Horror, covering ace pilot Bertie Smythe's induction into the Priory, as well as a brief overview available on the Mythos website. The Priory faction box contains the following models, adding up to 100 points: Zachary Lazarus, Zeus, Abigail Halsey, Bertie Smythe, Katie Page, and Maharal. Zachary Lazarus is your leader on the table, so he'll be getting an additional action point when he's activated. His ready side is set up to act as a support character with some teeth to him. Here he has three separate myth abilities that will either heal a friendly model while removing all conditions from friendly models, force an attacking unit to gain an additional madness, and designate a target for Maharal. And it's not just Mythos abilities that help everyone else out. Arcane Warding reduces incoming arcane damage for anyone within 6 inches of Zachary. Fencer gives him a better chance of landing a solid hit with his Rapier Cane, and giving enemies the bleed condition when you spend Mythos for it. His Revenge of Thoth ability also gives him some ranged capabilities, as well as the opportunity to set people on fire, which is always nice. Just be careful with who you keep nearby, as he can get a bit dangerous if his card gets flipped over to the altered side. Zachary will lose all of his myth abilities aside from Command, as well as Arcane Warding, Fencer, and Mental Strain. His charge rating also gets reduced to 0, so he won't be able to get into melee if this happens. Uncontrolled Energies turns Zachary into a bomb that will deal 4 wounds to anyone within 8 inches that fails an arcane defense test, including Zachary. In exchange, however, Purify the World turns him into a mobile fireball turret, forcing him to cast Revenge of Thoth at the closest enemy model at the start of his activation. Assuming you rolled well enough on the madness table to actually do something, of course. Zeus is the Professor's pet cat and frequent conversation partner, and the right hand of the Professor. He's also the only unit currently available for the Priory that has the ability to swap between the ready and altered states by spending myth. This gives Zeus a great deal of flexibility in how he can be used in-game. The Familiar special rule allows the Professor to channel arcane attacks through Zeus to hit targets farther away once per activation. Acrobatic lets Zeus ignore difficult terrain, short obstacles, and gives him the ability to reroll attacks after charging and jumping, and can make a combat defense test to avoid taking wound from falling. Cat reflexes let him ignore disengaging strikes, and his claws have the potential to give opponents the blinded condition. The altered side of Zeus's card turns him into a more offensive unit at the expense of some damage mitigation and utility. Cat reflexes is gone, as is Familiar. In exchange, the attack rating for his claws attack increases by 1, as does his combat defense and arcane defense. He also gains Bastet's Blessing, which reduces all incoming non-conditioned damage by 1. Zeus isn't meant to be a frontline fighter with only 12 wounds, but more as a flanker and a finisher instead. Abigail Halsey is a toned-down version of Professor Lazarus with some unique tricks to bring to the fight. She comes with a pick that can apply bleed, as well as Revenge of Thoth for some ranged firepower. Research lets her spend 1 myth point to gain the ability to reroll all dice for a single attack or test during that turn. Reassuring Presence gives a boost to sanity test for anyone within 12 inches of her, and Apprentice gives her a boost to arcane attacks when within 8 inches of Professor Lazarus. Her altered state, however, makes her a bit tricky to use. Research is gone, as is Reassuring Presence, which makes sense as having a raving crazy lady with a pickaxe standing next to you isn't really all that common. Apprentice gets replaced with Father Warned Me, which gives her a -1 penalty to arcane attacks if she's close to Professor Lazarus. Agatophobe forces her to take a sanity test every time she wants to use Myth, and a failure results in the Myth being discarded with no effect taking place. What is interesting about her altered state is Dreamwalker. When flipped, Abigail can move 2d6 inches anywhere on the board, and if she ends up in base contact with an enemy model, they immediately suffer 2 wounds. None of her base stats change, however. Bertie Smythe is your best source of ranged attacks and your only source of template weapons. He has a Myth ability, appropriately named Burn in Hell, that will allow his flamethrower attacks to ignore cover during this activation, which can always be useful. Keep Moving gives any friendly model within 12 inches the opportunity to make a free 3-inch movement after successfully defending against a ranged or arcane attack, helping keep the team mobile. War as Hell lets you reroll sanity tests for fear. Frankly, my dear, gives you the option to reroll all dice for a single test or attack once per turn, provided you can see either one of the Priory's female units. Seems like a good guy to keep close by, right? Yeah. To a point. When Bertie gets flipped to his altered state, he loses a lot. Jumping at shadows will force Bertie to make an immediate flamethrower attack against the closest model, friend or foe. He'll also be rolling 3d6 for the attack and applying burn. After this, his flamethrower is gone for the rest of the game. And if there's no model within range, he still dumps his entire fuel supply and loses the weapon. And with a madness threshold of 3, it may come sooner rather than later. Fortunately, Bertie isn't completely out of the game if he flips. Mission First gives him the opportunity to not provoke disengaging strikes if he's holding an objective, and Last Man lets him re-roll on the madness table. Your best option is to keep Bertie somewhat at range until he gets close to his madness threshold, then get him away from everyone else to avoid an unexpected Priory barbecue. Kitty Page is a solid all-around support character with some additional mobility options. Her sprint ability lets her add 2 to her move and charge actions for a single Myth point. This will help her get in range to use her nail gun attack either as a ranged or melee weapon. Using it at range can apply bleed, while the up-close and personal option can apply paralyzed. Solid as a Rock lets nearby models re-roll madness tests they need to make in the start phase. Tough as Nails reduces non-condition damage dealt by 1, and a Good Impression gives her 1 re-roll for a test or attack per turn, provided she can see Professor Lazarus. She does only have a madness value of 3 though, so try to protect her if you can. Once she flips, however, Kitty becomes much less useful. All of her abilities are removed and replaced with Crippling Indecision. She has to make an immediate sanity test and gains fatigue if she fails. If she's forced to flip during her activation, she loses 1 action point and the condition stays under that until the end of her next activation. On the bright side, however, Kitty gains an additional Myth point to add to the pool once she becomes altered, so yay? Rounding out our faction list today is Maharal, a gigantic clay golem wielding a broken-off lamppost as a cudgel, because why not? Anyone who gets hit with said improvised weapon may end up with the fatigue condition if you get a critical success or spend the Myth to apply it. His Sandstorm Myth ability can give himself and everyone within 8 inches the benefit of soft cover. Abomination lets him not only cause fear, but force your opponent to gain madness regardless of whether or not they pass their fear test. Singular Purpose gives Maharal a +2 combat attack bonus while targeting a model marked by Professor Lazarus. It also means he does not provoke disengaging strikes from anyone aside from the marked model. If the marked model is killed, Maharal immediately flips to his altered state. Sweeping Strike lets him immediately attack another model in range if he causes at least 1 wound on a model during his activation for free. Just keep in mind there needs to be at least 2 models in melee range for this to work. Maharal's altered state is a bit different than everyone else. When in his altered state, Maharal is basically in sleep mode. His movement stats are reduced to 0, he cannot take any action, and is immune to all conditions. Scouring Sands means that any models that get within 3 inches of an altered Maharal get a -1 penalty to their move and charge values up until the end of their activation and suffer 1 wound. If he's attacked, Maharal will immediately flip back over to ready and gain Singular Purpose against the model that attacked it. The best way to use Maharal is to move him up the board first and let your opponent deal with a 28 wound monstrosity smashing things while everyone else uses Sandstorm to get a measure of cover and safety. Synergy is the name of the game for the Priory. Most models have some sort of aura effect to bolster their teammates and keep them in the fight. Careful positioning of everyone on your side of the board will be necessary, as the members of the Priory can be rather nasty once they hit their madness threshold. Well, that's going to do it for me today. Stay tuned for more Wild West Exodus, Mythos, Fog and Friction content in the near future, as well as some looks at Dystopian Wars and Lost World Exodus in the future. Maybe. Please? Alright. Take care, everyone. The term Priory is an umbrella is used. The term damn it. Alright. Yay, edit that out. Birdie Smythe is your best source of range attack. I'm gonna break these up more.